Thank you, first of all. I'm very pleased and honored to be here, especially after Dr. Rafiqul Mullah's talk, which already gave you a challenge. So my session goal, after your talk, sir, not much to be said, because you already given a challenge to the budding PhDs. So thank you for an eloquent speech and a topic, exciting. However, we have all our jobs to do. Again, greetings from Sunshine State of Tennessee. We bring greetings from the Tennessee State University. We are very pleased to forge a partnership with the AABSS. This is our first meeting. Dr. Wahid already presented the journal. So, how many of you want to publish in that journal? Raise your hands. Done. Done. That's your goal, probably. But how do you get there?
You did not look at me.
Yes, sir. Yeah, already published everywhere. So your job is done. Now, how we get there, that's the challenge. Okay, when you have finished your write-up, send it to Dr. Wahid. We all review, and you get comments. But how do you get there? When you get there, the very first step is to have a Ph.D. period after your name, which is Professor Boyle already gave you a little overview. The 1920 was the first PhD. 1926 was next. Now fast forward almost 90 years, we have produced hundreds of thousands of PhDs all over the world. And some might say that has it really changed anything? In economics, there is a society called American Economic Association, of which I'm a member. I used to go to their annual meetings everywhere in the United States. I don't go there much anymore. And every year, there's about 10,000 or so economists gathered, all big cities, Chicago, Boston, etc. And these are all PhDs, or PhD students. First time I presented in that session, 1986, when I was defending my dissertation, long time ago. That tells you my age. So 1986, I finished my PhD. So I see myself, some of you at the back, if you are starting today or you are somewhat advanced in your endeavor, I see myself there. It was a very arduous task and very challenging, very daunting. Sometimes you feel like, well, this is it. I can't do anymore. I quit. The job, the road ahead is very, very challenging. Okay? So you need to be fearless. You need to be challenging yourself. These are some of the things that you'll be talking about. First of all, so I'll go by, I have a bad habit. I just must tell you. I have PowerPoint somewhere there, I just digress totally. Okay? I don't naturally normally stick to my written stuff, but it is there, it will be available to you. So anyone can look at that later on. So what is a PhD dissertation? We call it dissertation in the United States. That's commonly accepted typically. Some places they call it thesis. So the distinction between a thesis and a dissertation is thesis is typically referred to a master level, and dissertation is the PhD, a doctoral level. So what is a thesis? What is a dissertation in this case? It's an integral component of a doctoral study. I know we have students from Malaysia, from Australia, from India, Pakistan, Nigeria, from many other places. There are various ways to come to the same conclusion, write a dissertation. In the United States, the standard method is a 4 to 5 year program in any area of social science. If you're in hard science, it could be 7, 8, 10, never. But in the area of economics, typically, or social sciences, it takes about anywhere from 4, 5, or 6 years to complete a PhD. Now in that process, you'll be doing a whole bunch of courseworks, which is unlike of, let's say, India. I think it is changing. In European countries, I don't know much Malaysian system, Australian probably somewhat mixed, etc. What do you do in the United States? We push you into rigorous coursework for 2 to 3 years. Why? Because you have to be at the cutting edge of the present theory, practices, applications. Because your dissertation, which I'll come to that in a second, will address a topic and you will apply the methodology that is state of the art, most current. So unless you are exposed to the theories, practices, methodologies that are already out there, you will not be able to do a justice to your topic. Hence, we expose you to the rigorous nature of the coursework, which is very difficult. I have seen in many places, for example, University of Chicago, my training is, even though I have PhD from University of Utah State, but my PhD coordinator, everybody was from University of Chicago. So we followed a rigorous protocol of University of Chicago. In the University of Chicago system and those that follow, they typically admit 50 to 60 students every year. By the second year, half gone, cannot pass through the coursework rigor. Then third year, when they do typically their proposal, another 50% is gone. And then finally, only at the end of the tunnel, 4 or 5 years down the road, only 5 to 10% earn a PhD. So it's a very rigorous journey. Okay. So that's the dissertation. It's an integral part of a doctoral study, and it's expected to make a new and creative contribution. Note the operative word, creative. Dr. Mullah said, creative. Creativity is very, very important. And who is a PhD? Well, this picture I borrowed from Wikipedia. It's the University of Oxford regalia. So the person who has gone through the Oxford coursework, wrote the dissertation, earns that regalia, and then joins the rank of PhDs or doctor at the end. Idea matters. First and foremost, have to have an idea. Without the idea, there is nothing. When you come up with the idea, half of the battle is already won. But what we have to do, the idea could be typically the idea starts from lots of different things. Idea is a big thing. But then, through the process, we narrow down, we filter the idea into something that is researchable. So what do? We have the idea and contextualize it. Okay? Your idea could be out of the box, but you have to put that within the context, the proper perspective. So this is my idea, and now I contextualize it and embellish that upon that context through rigorous literature review, which I'm coming to next slide. And then I sell that idea. It's a big selling job. When you do a PhD, and typically it's the same everywhere, you have to sell your idea to your committee. PhD is a cliche. Those committee members, 5 or 6 or 10, or external committee, will award the PhD. Okay? There's no pass or fail. You're not taking an exam that you get an A grade or B grade or C grade. Either you get a PhD or you don't. Then you come back and redo the whole thing. So it's a committee member, you have to satisfy the committee members. So your idea needs to be there, you contextualize it, and then you challenge that idea with alternatives. Well, this is an idea. Is there parallel ideas? How do I make my idea the most relevant and sell that idea to my committee members? And then to the rest of the world, okay, once it is done. Typically, and you can go online and Google it, I have some references I can give you. See the format of the dissertation. More or less it's the same, okay? To some extent, a little bit here or there. But the format of a PhD dissertation is more or less the same. You develop an idea, and then contextualize that idea within the background introduction. So you tell your story. The best dissertation I have seen, I've served a lot, quite a few, is not so much, ingrained in mathematics. Over-mathematization is a problem in our field, that is true. But best dissertation I have served as a committee, a chair, or a member, is the sellability of the idea. The idea is crystal clear. That's something that we typically look for in the committee. I look for, at least. So that is contextualized within the background, within the introduction. So you sold your idea, oh, this is great. Let's read on. If you cannot impress upon your committee member or your listeners that, well, this is the story I'm going to tell, right? Why would I go to the next page? You lost me, very first page. So you have to go beyond the first page, first couple of sections, which is the introduction, background, your story, your ideas. Okay? Then you start literature review. Okay? This is a very common pitfall that I have seen. You try to put everything, we call it the kitchen sink. Okay? So you bring in from the day of Adam Smith. No, it's not needed. Everybody knows Adam Smith's invisible hand. Okay? You don't need to bring in Adam Smith from back from his grave. So you start the literature review. You already have the background. You have contextualized your idea. Then you start embellish upon that. Throw some lights on your idea based on what other people have done in the past. So I would say 10 to 20 years for the most part. Start with most recent. You can go back. If there is a seminal article that is pivotal in the formation of your idea, please keep harping on that. Okay? And then you go back and forth between some of the literature that are important, very important to your research. It's not necessary that you have done every literature that is relevant. One of my articles is referring about citation is 870 times. So do you think that 870 people will refer to that article? No. Some of the path-breaking, some of the key literature that are relevant need to be. So try to focus on the literature review as relevant as possible. Okay? So that's it. But what I would like to see that a clearly demarcated literature review section. That will then lead to the next section, which is your research questions, hypothesis, methodology, etc. These are some of the things that we tell students not to commit to those mistakes. For example, quotes. When you are quoting, as you know, that you properly quote. You don't paraphrase that and claim that it is your own. That's not done. Okay? If somebody has done something, if you're referring to that, give him or her proper credit, due credit. Okay? So you do, and that goes by styles. Chicago has a style, then APA has that style. So you follow a particular style and then give references, credence to that reference. So quotation is a very important thing. Plagiarism is a non-starter. Non-starter, I have the board. If we find as an examiner that there is a hint of plagiarism, that dissertation is immediately nullified. It's more or less a standard practice in the United States. I had to do that a few times in the past. So be careful about plagiarism. So that goes hand in hand with the quotation and the quote. So if you claim that you quoted from somebody, did not give a due credit, that's knowingly or unknowingly plagiarism. So by all means, avoid plagiarism. Okay? So once you've done that, once you have documented, cataloged literature review sections, tied back and forth with your idea, your background, your problem, then you are ready for your research questions. And I call it purpose and objectives. This is very important. And sometimes most of the examiners probably would look these particular aspects and your conclusion more than anything else. Purpose of the study must be clear. Has to be very clear. Keep going back and ask, and what is the purpose? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why my audience will be interested in this particular study? Why? The why is the most important question in the entire process. Once you have done that, so some of the research questions, then you lay out clearly objectives of your study. Okay? These are the objectives. Objective number 1, this. Objective number 2, this. If you have multiple objectives, that's fine. But please try to avoid circular reasoning. Sometimes one objective, what you call nested objectives. That might be, you need to be very clear that this is my objective number 1. This is my objective 2, or under objective 1 I may have some sub-objectives. Okay? So those need to be clearly delineated there. And then immediately research questions are followed by hypothesis. Here, I'm an economist by training and by profession. So I take pride in that even though it has been branded as dismal science, to some extent I subscribe to that view, and to a large extent I don't subscribe to that view. Yes, in economics, with some rigorous methods, we can show, I don't use the word prove, we don't prove anything. We show or we fail to show certain things. So yes, within the dismal science framework, we can show that certain things hold and certain things do not hold. That's what the hypothesis is. A hypothesis is nothing but an educated guess, follows immediately from research questions. Okay? So you have guessed, these are the relationships that hold in a particular way, whether it is empirically verifiable or theoretically verifiable. Doesn't matter. It has to be tested. That's the scientific approach. The scientific approach is you propose something, you subject that to alternatives, we challenge, we do some testings, and at the end we come out and say, yes, my hypothesis is good. We fail to reject. We don't say it's accepted, it's fail to reject or reject it. Okay? So those are there. That then gives us methodology. How are you going to show that your hypothesis makes sense? How are you going to show that your idea matters? Right? So then you are ready for methodology. What methodology will I employ to test my hypothesis? All right? I'm going to give you an empirical approach. So for example, if you think, giving the last presenters, which was very good, we ran out of time, but he had brilliant ideas, and Professor Shira, that urbanization has caused income inequality. I think that was one of his propositions, right? So, for example, if that be a research topic for anybody here, how do you show that? That urbanization, because of the fast track of urbanization, which is a common phenomenon everywhere, I don't know any place that has not experienced that particular phenomenon, even in the United States. The urbanization, rate of growth of urbanization has caused income inequality to be worsening. Is that a research hypothesis? That is a research hypothesis. Can that be tested? Absolutely, it could be tested. So you form that research hypothesis, we call it maintained hypothesis or a null hypothesis, and then you test it against an alternative hypothesis that no, urbanization has not done that. Actually, urbanization has helped mitigating income inequality. So then you put your idea against an alternative idea, right? And how do you test that? Well, you collect data. You could have a model, mathematical model, an econometric model. We like to have an econometric model, or a simple statistical model. And then you come up with certain attributes, some of the test statistics. Okay? Some of the test statistics. Could be a t-test, could be an f-test, could be a likelihood ratio test. Lots of different types of test statistics out there. Okay, I'm not going to give you a pedagogical lecture on different types of applications of the test statistics, but you know that. In your research methodology classes, you are taught those. If you're an economics student, then of course we teach that in our regular econometrics courses at length. So, bottom line is, you put your hypothesis to a test, you come up with an appropriate test statistics, and you see that test statistics hold or not. Okay? In the next section, after you have done that, let's say you have done a very solid econometric model, regression model. Lots of different types of regression analysis can be done. It could be simple linear regression backhoe, developed. You could have a very sophisticated, complicated maximum likelihood estimation, full information maximum likelihood, or you can have time series model, Ghosh, arch. There are lots of different types of sophistication has come with the advent of the computer softwares. All right. When I did my PhD thesis back in 1986, I had theory portion, then I had an empirical part. There was no software available. So what I had to do, I had to learn Fortran program. Nobody taught me that. I had to learn myself and then write my own computer program to do the simulation. in a particular area. Anyway, so if you are using a survey analysis, I know there are lots of management, marketing types of folks, and you do survey analysis quite a bit. In fact, I just finished one research grant which involved a huge amount of survey. So if you are doing a survey, not so easy. Economists tend to undermine other areas of social science. I used to do that. But as I have grown older, no, not anymore. I think there is a significant amount of research and rigor in marketing management areas of social sciences. So if you're doing a survey, make sure that the survey has been developed properly. And there are lots of do's and don'ts of survey. One thing that we look at typically when you do this survey, how is the survey developed? Has it been developed using focus groups, using the actual user of the survey? Okay? Because you and I have some ideas, but for the one that is actually going to use this survey, have we involved them in developing the instruments? So that's a technique called focus group development. Then what you need to do, you need to look at the validity of the constructs. We call it internal validity, external validity, and there are lots of measurements, callback alpha and whatnot. So you check the internal, external validity of the survey instruments. And we are measuring those. One needs to have a scale issue, scale development, whether you Likert scale, 5-point scale, 7-point scale, all those are discussed in the survey methodology. Okay? So you be very careful about the survey. Then, the most important, how do you conduct the survey? Because what you are trying to do, you are trying to generalize your findings. Your survey may have only encompassed about a sample size of 50 or 60. How is that 60, sample size of 60, selected? Are they randomly done? If so, what are the sample selection method? Because you are going to generalize. I say, okay, here are 60 people, I just take a survey, and are you random? You came here for a particular conference. You're not randomly selected. Okay? So it has to be properly done. The sampling design has to be proper. There has to be statistical rigor of that, because you are going to claim that your findings are general. It holds without boundaries. So that's very important for the survey. Well, then I already said that when you did that, whether it's a survey or just secondary data or survey data called primary data, if you collect primary data or you are using secondary data, then you put those various types of tests. Okay, statistical test. And then when you did that, then a summary of results is important. This is very, very important. Sometimes dissertation, remember, dissertation is not writing a journal article. Okay? Dissertation is maybe have 150 pages, 200 pages, or even 60 pages. Journal article will be only 10 pages coming from your dissertation. So dissertation, you have to explain a lot more than what you do in a journal article. Okay, so you have to have proper footnote, proper identification, summary tables. So if any of you are doing a dissertation, I'm sure that you are at various stages, but if you are not completed your dissertation, well, if you are completed, then you probably are not here unless you're an advisor. But if you are still at any stage, then you have to submit the dissertation. And presentation is very, very important. If you are using data, first and foremost, I look at it. Have you defined the variables that is under study? How well have you defined the variables? Have you done a summary statistics, descriptive statistics, which all statistical program will have it? Have you defined what is the range of the variables, the mean, the outlier? Okay? Paul Samuelson used to teach us, study your outliers. That's number one teaching that Paul Samuelson, if you look at Paul Samuelson, who is the father of modern economics, probably taught us, look at the outliers. So plot the data and see where the outliers are. If the outliers are really an artifact of the survey, or maybe just mistyping, okay? Because we type the data, right? However you do the scan that or type the data. So look at the outliers and do some analysis there first. So a summary presentation of the data itself, variables, is very, very important. Then we like to see that you have presented nicely, if you are doing a regression analysis, you explain the variables, you explain the basic statistics that go with the regression results, such as R-square, F statistic, likelihood ratio, you know what those are. It varies from one topic to another topic. You properly and different kinds of model. Here, I like to see, here is my dependent variable, my y, if you're running a regression. This is my dependent variable, and these are my independent variables. So there's a survey, secondary data, primary data, it is. Because that way, I can see how that particular independent variable influence the dependent variable. So that's very important for summary and presentation. Okay? Based on that, you conclude. So what you have done, you have structured your dissertation, right from idea, background, introduction, then literature review, then your research questions, then your hypothesis, then the methodology, and then the results. Now you're about to summarize, and you have to say that this is the conclusion of my research. I come up with a grandiose idea, then grandiose idea become filtered through, become research questions. Those research questions then became hypotheses. And hypotheses, I challenge those hypotheses with alternatives. And here I showed that those research hypotheses actually are valid or not valid. Okay? Sometimes you don't have to have all your hypotheses tested, succeed, you know? Because you came up with something, you have educated guess, and research, like Steve said, that you are embarking on a challenge. You don't know what the outcome would be. So be open to that. All right? If it is good that some of your hypotheses are tested as you would anticipate, but don't get discouraged if the results are, if the R-square is bad. Well, that may be the limitation of your study. That may be the limitation of your data. Okay? That may be the further research. Go for further research. All right? So that could be research. And I'm going to end with a topic that originally I thought we'll somehow integrate with it, but time would not permit that. But today, when I heard Dr. Rafiqul Mullah, it came to my mind that I should probably throw that challenge. If you are a budding PhDs now, if some ideas are still cropping up, still challenging you, still waking you up in the middle of the night, hey, I'm thinking this is an idea. The light bulbs are somewhere sort of about to glow. The idea is challenge yourself with this idea. Cooperation or competition. We heard, in fact, that's my current research topic. We know that the market competition, such as perfect competition, is the norm, is the golden rule, right? For those of you who teach economics or learn economics, we teach that marginal cost equal to marginal revenue equal to price is the ultimate goal. Okay? You know that, right? Marginal cost, marginal revenue equal to price, that's the perfect competition for profit maximization. What happens? What happens in the marketplace? When profit is maximized, for whom it is maximized? It's for those firms that stay in the market, profit is maximized. What about those firms that left the market? Could not meet the challenges, the vagaries of nature, could not meet the challenges of the social structure. What happens to those firms? They wane out, they die in vain. And what happens to the social cost that goes with it, right? We don't talk about in economics, in marginalist paradigm. I was in Chicago, trained, all right? Same course line, everything same, which was very, very neoclassical approach, totally marginalist paradigm. So what happens when the firms then don't survive, right? What happens to those? What happens to labor, entrepreneurship? All that goes into the process. Do the society give them other opportunities? Probably not. Hence we create all the problems that we see in today's world. So I give you a topic to look at it from a dissertation perspective. Cooperation or competition? Which one is optimal from a society's viewpoint? And which one is a degenerative process? I think the so-called marginalist paradigm is a degenerative process that has gone us to this far in the society. Thank you very much. I would entertain some questions.
About 5 minutes, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes. Please, if you tell me your name and your affiliation. Yeah, just come there.
This is Wasif bin Latif. He is the student, UNIMAP. My question is that what is the difference between idea and concept?
Not much difference. Idea could be a much bigger spectrum.
But all the ideas is not include the concept.
No, too. That's why I said, you start with an idea, then it becomes, well, you call it concept, or you contextualize that.
Yeah. As far as I
Okay.
know that I have an idea to explore the big things, but
Exactly. That's why I said.
It's not a reality to do the work.
Right.
So I think that is.
You all start with an idea, then you bring it, you narrow it down.
Yeah.
You narrow it down to a researchable
Yeah.
question. So for example, your idea may be, well, I want to alleviate poverty. I want to alleviate poverty by distributing some, vouchers. I'm just giving an example. Then the question will be how? I mean, what are the other area? What kind of context? So that's important. So you start with a broader idea, and then you narrow it down. That's the learning process in doing the dissertation.
Thank you very much.
Good. Any other? Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. My name is Ghosh. I am a PhD student from Cambridge University, Australia.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question. I used a mixed method, in fact, for survey and interview.
Sure.
Actually, what should be the appropriate technique to match them? I mean, how can I present them with hypothesis testing, and where should be the, especially where should be the place of interview findings of those things?
Right. That is becoming very common these days in social sciences, a mixed method. So you're doing a qualitative and quantitative, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So there could be a mixture of that technique. Nothing wrong with that technique, but sometimes we try to jump too much from qualitative research into a quantitative research. So you can do qualitative in terms of describing those, but your hypothesis may not be easily sort of testable from qualitative research. So what I would advise is be careful about what you're trying to claim from the qualitative research. Okay? So qualitative research is more like case studies if you do. But if you're doing surveys out of that findings from the qualitative survey, qualitative research, then you can develop that into a quantitative method. In fact, a couple of my students are just doing that. Based on the qualitative, like focus groups, etc., some of the basic findings are there, and then they are making that to a survey instrument. And when you have a survey instrument, collect data for good sample size, 60, 70, 80, 100 or more, then you subject those into a empirical finding. Okay?
Yes, sir. But some statements may be too narrative that cannot be quantified. In that
True.
case, yeah, if it differs significantly from the quantitative findings, so
Nothing wrong in doing that, as long as you do not claim that your qualitative research applies everywhere. So that's too much of a stretch in terms of the findings from the qualitative study. You can say that this is the limitation of the study. You have done qualitative research on a particular aspect, and these are your findings. But you cannot subject those qualitative research, unless the sample size is large enough, into a quantitative analysis.
thank you, sir.
Dr. Wahid has a
Make
point.
a little comment in response to this question. If there is a difference between the conclusion of qualitative research and quantitative research, then what you have to do, you have to give a satisfactory explanation of why you think they are different, and that is also going to be a part of your study.
Right, sure. I think we have one more question over there. Yes.
Why you think there is a difference between the outcome of qualitative study and the quantitative
You
study?
come near
Also
there.
going to be a part of your dissertation.
Right.
Last question.
Last question. Yeah, please.
My name is Abdulaziz Shiu.
Can you put the microphone? I cannot hear you. Yeah.
My name is Abdulaziz Shiu. UPM PhD student, UPM Malaysia. My question is, how do you relate literature review to research questions? As we have discussed in your discussion, you said you're supposed to derive research questions from the literature review. So what is the best way of deriving research questions from the literature review?
Yeah, there is no one way to address that. I think the literature review typically addresses the problem that you have mentioned right at the beginning, right? When you have the problems, you already have questions in mind, questions for your dissertation. What literature review does, literature review says that, well, you have studied what other people have done. Other people may have addressed the similar questions in some fashion. Then you are looking at a different fashion, or you're trying to extend the literature with your questions and with your methodology. You're extending the scope of current literature. So I would like to see, I'm very classical in that sense, that I would like to see the research questions on hypothesis come after the literature review, not before. Research questions may be mentioned several times, but when you formalize the hypothesis, this is my prerogative, I like to see that it comes after the entire literature review, because that way I see that you have sort of satisfied and looked at what other people have done. And then you formulate properly the research questions in hypothesis. Okay? I think that concludes our session. Thank you very much for great questions.